Kong Daeho pressed his face against the cold window of the transport ship. Stars stretched past like silver threads as they moved through space. His hands shook a little as he watched the massive space station grow bigger and bigger ahead of them. Galactic Council. Station Nexus Prime was huge. Bigger than any city on Earth, the station had spinning rings and tall towers that reached out like metal arms. Lights blinked everywhere like 1,000 eyes watching him. "First time seeing it?" asked Park Min-soo from the seat next to him. The older man was built like a rock. Scars covered his arms from years of fighting. He was Daeho's mentor and the reason Daeho was here at all? "Yes, sir," Daeho said. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. "It's so big," Min-soo smiled, but his eyes looked worried. "The Galactic Defense Academy is inside that station. You're going to train with the best warriors from across the galaxy. Remember what I taught you. Humans may not be the strongest or fastest, but we never give up." Daeho nodded, but his stomach felt sick. He was 19 years old and one of only 3 humans picked for the academy this year. Back on Earth, everyone said he was special. Here. He felt very small. The transport ship docked with a loud clang. Other passengers started moving toward the exit. Daeho saw his first aliens up close. A tall being with blue crystal skin walked past. Its body looked like it was made of living glass. Behind it came something that looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. The lizard thing had scales like armor and teeth as long as Daeho's fingers. "Silvari and Krogan," Min-soo whispered. "They'll be your classmates." Daeho's mouth went dry. How was he supposed to train with these creatures? They looked like they could break him in half without trying. They walked through the station's halls. Everything was built for beings much bigger than humans. Daeho had to take 2 steps for. Every one of Min-soo's other species moved around them. Some had 4 arms. Others floated in the air without touching the ground. A few looked almost human, but had skin that changed colors like a rainbow dot. The academy's main hall was even more impressive than the station. The ceiling was so high that Daeho couldn't see the top. Hundreds of cadets filled the space. Most were twice Daeho's size. He felt like a child in a room full of giants. "Welcome, cadets, to the Galactic Defense Academy," a voice boomed from speakers. A being walked onto the stage at the front of the hall. It had silver skin and moved like liquid metal. "I am High Counselor Zephron. You are here because your species has proven worthy of joining the galaxy's elite defenders." Daeho tried to stand taller. Around him, other cadets looked proud and strong. He felt their eyes on him and the 2 other humans in the crowd. One was Lee Hae-jin, a smart girl from Seoul who would work in communications. The other was Choi Woo-jin, who always acted like he was better than everyone else. "However," Zephron continued, "some question whether all species truly belong here." A new figure walked onto the stage. This one looked almost human, but taller and thinner. Her skin was pale blue and her hair was white as snow. She moved with the grace of a dancer. "Ambassador Velanara of the Silvari Council has concerns to share," Zephron said. Velanara stepped forward. Her voice was cold and clear like breaking ice. "The Galactic Council has made an error. Humans do not belong in this academy." The words hit Daeho like a punch to the chest. Around him, alien cadets turned to stare. Some started to whisper and point. "Look at them," Velanara said, pointing directly at Daeho. "They have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. They cannot read minds or control energy like the Silvari. They do not have the strength of the Krogan or the hunting skills of the Vorthek." A group of Volf-like beings near the back growled in agreement. These had to be the Vorthek. They were covered in thick fur and had yellow eyes that glowed in the light. Even from far away, Daeho could see their sharp teeth and long claws. "Humans are weak," Velanara continued. "They are slow and soft. They have no natural weapons. What can they possibly offer to the galaxy's defense forces?" Daeho felt his face burn with shame. Other cadets were laughing now. Not all of them, but enough. He wanted to run away and hide. Instead, he forced himself to stand still. "We shall see," said a new voice from the back of the hall. It was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. The crowd parted as a massive Vorthek walked forward. This one was bigger than the others. Scars covered his fur and one of his eyes was white and blind. The hunt will show us what each species is truly worth. Thrakver speaks wisdom, Zephyrin said quickly. The silver being looked nervous. We will let training and trials determine each cadet's value, but the damage was done. As the ceremony ended and cadets moved to their dormitories, Deho heard the whispers following him. Weak humans. Why are they even here? They'll be dead in a week. Choi Woo-jin walked up to him in the hallway. His face was red with anger. Nice job embarrassing our entire species, he hissed. Thanks to you, everyone thinks we're jokes. I didn't do anything, Deho said. Exactly. You just stood there while that Savari made us look like fools. You should have said something. You should have fought back. Lee Hai-jin appeared beside them. Leave him alone, Woo-jin. It wasn't his fault. Wasn't it? Woo-jin sneered. Look at him. He looks exactly like what they think we are. Small and weak and scared. Hai-jin put her hand on Deho's shoulder. Don't listen to him. We'll prove them wrong. But as Deho lay in his small bed that night, he wondered if Woo-jin was right. Maybe humans really didn't belong here. Maybe they were too weak to stand with the galaxy's greatest warriors. Through his window, he could see stars scattered across the darkness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth. His home seemed very far away. Here, surrounded by beings who could crush him without thinking about it, Deho felt more alone than he had ever felt in his life. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring the first training exercises. Tomorrow he would have to prove that humans deserved to be here. The problem was, he wasn't sure he believed it himself. In the shadows of the dormitory hall, yellow eyes watched and waited. Thrakver, the scarred Vorthek, stood silent as stone. He had seen something in the young human during the ceremony. Something the others had missed. The way the boy had stood straight even when the world seemed to fall down around him. The way he had not run when others would have fled. The old hunter smiled, showing teeth like white knives. Perhaps this human would surprise them all. Perhaps. The hunt would reveal more than anyone expected. Time would tell. Time always did. 3 weeks had passed since the ceremony, and each day made Deho feel smaller. The training exercises were brutal. While Krogan cadets lifted weights that could crush a human, Deho struggled with loads half their size. When Savari cadets moved through combat forms like liquid light, Deho stumbled and fell. The Vorthek cadets hunted practice targets with skills that made human soldiers look like children playing games. Today was weapon training. Deho held a plasma rifle that felt too heavy in his hands. Around him, other cadets handled their weapons like they were born with them. A Krogan cadet named Gorthek fired his rifle with one hand while the other cadets needed both hands just to hold theirs steady. Pathetic, muttered a Savari cadet as Deho missed his target for the 5th time. Why do we even pretend humans belong here? Instructor Vexstar, a 4-armed being with skin like metal, shook his head. Cadet Kong, you are holding the rifle. Wrong, again. Deho tried to adjust his grip, but his hands were shaking. The shame burned in his chest like acid. He fired again and missed by even more. Perhaps human cadet should try smaller weapon, Gorthek said with a laugh that sounded like breaking rocks. Maybe toy pistol for human children. The other cadets laughed. Even some of the instructors smiled. Deho felt his face turn red, but he said nothing. What could he say? They were right. He was failing at everything. After training, Deho walked alone through the station's quieter halls. He found himself at an observation deck that looked out at the stars. The view was beautiful, but it only made him feel more homesick. You look like someone who has lost his pack. Deho spun around. Thrakver stood behind him, moving silent as a shadow despite his huge size. The scarred Vorthak walked to the window and looked out at the stars with his one good eye. I'm not doing very well, Deho said. It felt stupid to say it to the most feared instructor in the academy, but the words came out anyway. No, Thrakver agreed. You fight like prey instead of predator. You think like victim instead of hunter. The words stung, but Deho knew they were true. Maybe I should go home. Maybe humans really don't belong here. Thrakvar was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Deho had ever heard it. My people have an old saying. The cub that survives the hardest winter becomes the strongest Volf. But sometimes, young hunter, the winter is too hard for normal training. What do you mean? The old Vorthak turned to face him. His yellow eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. There is an ancient law older than the Galactic Council, older than the Academy. Any being who feels his worth has been questioned can invoke the hunt of proving. What's that? A trial from the old days. The challenged one must survive 7 days and nights while being hunted by a chosen warrior. If he reaches the sacred stones, he wins respect for his entire species. If he fails, Thrakvar shrugged. He dies and his people are marked as unworthy forever. Deho felt cold all over. Has anyone ever succeeded? Few have tried. Fewer have lived. The last attempt was 200 years ago. A Krogan prince who wanted to prove his clan's honor. We found pieces of him scattered across 3 valleys. Then why tell me about it? Thrakvar studied him with that single eye. Because sometimes the only way to prove you are not prey is to turn and face the hunter. The question is, do you have the courage to try? That night, Deho couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his small room and thought about Thrakvar's words. The hunt of proving sounded like suicide. But what was the alternative? Go home in shame. Spend the rest of his life knowing he had failed when humanity needed him most? He thought about his father, who had died fighting alien raiders at the edge of human space. He thought about his mother, who worked 3 jobs to send him to the academy. He thought about all the humans back on Earth who were counting on him to prove they belonged among the stars. By morning, his mind was made up. The council chamber was full when Deho walked in. Word had spread somehow, and cadets from every species crowded the balconies to watch. High Counselor Zephyrin sat at the center of a curved table with representatives from each major species. Cadet Kong Deho, Zephyrin said, "You have requested to address this council. Speak." Deho's voice shook at first but grew stronger as he spoke. "I invoke the ancient right of the hunt of proving. I challenge any warrior to hunt me for 7 days. If I survive and reach the sacred stones, humanity earns its place among the warrior races. If I fail, we will leave and never return." The chamber exploded in noise. Cadets shouted in surprise. Council members talked over each other in a dozen different languages. Ambassador Velenara stood up, her pale face twisted with anger. "This is madness," she said. "The human will die and we will be responsible for his blood." "The law is clear," Thrakvar said from where he stood near the back. "Any being may invoke the hunt. It cannot be refused." "But no one has survived in centuries," protested a Krogan counselor. "It is essentially murder. That is the human's choice to make," Thrakvar replied. "Unless the council fears what might happen if he succeeds?" That silenced the room. Zephyrin looked around at the other council members. "Very well, the hunt of proving is granted. Who will serve as hunter? I will." A young Vorthak stepped forward from the crowd. He was smaller than Thrakvar, but still twice Deho's size. His fur was dark brown and his eyes were bright gold. "I am Quenter, nephew of Thrakvar. I accept the challenge." Thrakvar nodded approval. "My nephew is skilled but not yet experienced. It will be a fair hunt?" Velenara laughed coldly. "Fair? A human against a Vorthak hunter? The boy will be dead before the 2nd day." "We shall see," Thrakvar said. "We shall see." 2 days later, Deho stood on the transport pad wearing simple clothes and carrying only basic survival gear. The hunt would take place on Vorthak Prime. In the deep wilderness where their ancestors had hunted for thousands of years, Lehigh Jin stood beside him, tears in her eyes. "You don't have to do this," she said. "No one would blame you for changing your mind." "Yes, they would," Deho replied. "And I would blame myself." She hugged him tight. "I'll be monitoring from orbit." If your vital signs get too bad, I'm coming down there. No, he said firmly. If you interfere, the hunt is forfeit. Promise me you'll stay away no matter what happens. She wiped her eyes and nodded. Promise? But you better survive, Daeho. You better come back. Choi Woo-jin walked up as the transport prepared to leave. For once, he didn't look angry or superior. He looked worried. I've been a bastard to you, he said quietly. But you're doing this for all of us. For every human who dreams of walking among the stars. He held out his hand. Make us proud, brother. Daeho shook his hand and smiled. It was the first time Woo-jin had ever called him brother. The transport lifted off and headed for Vorthek Prime. Through the window, Daeho could see the planet growing larger. It was covered in thick forests and tall mountains. Somewhere down there, Quenter was already waiting. Park Min-soo sat across from him, cleaning his old service pistol. The weapon was scratched and worn but perfectly maintained. I wish I could give you this, Min-soo said. But the hunt forbids advanced weapons. You'll have to make do with what nature provides. You taught me how, Daeho said. Remember? Survival? Training in the Korean mountains? You said humans survived because we never gave up, Min-soo smiled sadly. That was training, son. This is real. That young Vorthak is going to be faster, stronger, and better armed than you. His senses are 10 times sharper than yours. He can track your scent for miles and see in the dark like it was daylight. Then how do I win? The old soldier was quiet for a moment. You don't try to match his strengths. You make him match yours. Humans didn't conquer Earth by being the biggest or fastest predators. We did it by being the smartest and most stubborn. The transport began its descent toward the planet's surface. Daeho could see endless forests stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in that wilderness, he would either prove humanity's worth or die trying. Remember, Min-soo said as they prepared to land, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for every human who ever looked at the stars and dreamed of flying among them. The transport touched down in a clearing surrounded by trees as tall as skyscrapers. Daeho stepped out and breathed the alien air. It smelled of pine and earth and something wild he couldn't name. Thrakver was waiting with several other Vorthek warriors. They would watch from a distance to make sure the hunt stayed fair. Quenter stood at the edge of the forest, his golden eyes already fixed on his prey. The hunt begins at sunset, Thrakver announced. 7 days to reach the Howling Stones. May the best hunter win. As the sun began to sink behind the mountains, Daeho felt fear and excitement mix in his chest. This was it. Win or lose, live. Or die, he would finally know if humans truly belonged among the galaxy's warriors. The hunt was about to begin. The sun disappeared behind the mountains, and darkness fell over the forest like a heavy blanket. Daeho knew that Quenter could see perfectly in the dark while he was nearly blind. He had maybe an hour before the real hunt began. He ran deeper into the forest, trying to put distance between himself and his starting point. The trees were huge and old, their branches blocking out even the starlight. Roots and fallen logs made the ground dangerous in the darkness. More than once, Daeho stumbled and nearly fell. Behind him, he heard a long, deep howl that made his blood freeze. Quenter was announcing the start of the hunt. The sound echoed through the forest, and other howls answered from far away. The Vorthek watching the hunt were calling back to the young hunter. Daeho forced himself to think clearly. Running blindly would only get him caught or killed. He needed a plan. Min-soo had taught him about something called persistence hunting. Ancient humans had used it to catch animals much faster than themselves. The idea was simple: keep following your prey until it got too tired to run anymore, but this hunt was backwards. Daeho was the prey and Quenter was the hunter. How could he turn that around? He found a small stream and knelt beside it to drink and think. The water was cold and clean. As he cupped it in his hands, an idea began to form. What if he could make Quenter do the chasing? What if he could tire out the hunter instead of running until he collapsed? Daeho smiled in the darkness. It was crazy, but it might work. He started moving along the stream, stepping in the water to hide his scent. Every few hundred meters he would climb out and leave obvious tracks in the soft dirt before jumping back into the water and continuing in a different direction. It would make his trail confusing and force Quenter to waste time figuring out which way he had really gone. The night was long and cold. Deho kept moving, using every trick Minsu had taught him. He climbed trees and jumped from branch to branch where possible. He walked backwards in his own footprints to make it look like he was going the other way. He even found some animal droppings and rubbed them on his clothes to confuse his scent. When dawn came, Deho was exhausted but still free. He found a thick grove of bush and crawled inside to rest. Through the leaves he could see a hillside across a small valley. After a few minutes he spotted movement. Quenter was there, nose to the ground, following one of the false trails Deho had left. The Vorthik looked frustrated. His golden fur was wet from crossing streams, and dirt covered his legs from climbing through thick brush. He kept stopping to sniff the air and growl in annoyance. Deho allowed himself a small smile. The hunt was working both ways now. The second day was harder. Quenter had figured out some of Deho's tricks and was getting closer. But Deho had new tricks, too. He found a dead log and used his knife to carve sharp stakes from the wood. He dug small holes in the ground and placed the stakes inside, then covered them with leaves and dirt. It was a simple trap, but it would slow down anyone following his trail. That evening, he heard Quenter yelp in pain and anger. One of the traps had worked. It wouldn't seriously hurt the tough Vorthik, but it would make him more careful. Careful meant slower. By the third day, both hunter and prey were learning about each other. Quenter had stopped trying to track Deho's scent and was instead watching for the kind of clever tricks humans were known for. Deho had started thinking like his enemy, trying to guess where a Vorthak hunter would expect him to go so he could go somewhere else instead. The forest was full of dangerous animals. Deho saw creatures with too many teeth and others with claws like swords. Most ran away when they smelled him, but some looked hungry enough to try their luck against a small human. On the fourth day, that almost got him killed. Deho was refilling his water bottle at another stream when he heard something big moving through the bush behind him. He turned to see a creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. It was twice his size and covered in scales that looked like armor. Its mouth was full of teeth like broken glass. The thing charged at him with a roar that shook the trees. Deho rolled to the side and grabbed a fallen branch as thick as his arm. The creature spun around and charged again, faster than anything. That big should be able to move. Deho swung the branch with all his strength. It broke against the creature's scales without doing any damage. The thing's claws raked across his chest, tearing his shirt and leaving burning lines of pain. He was going to die. The creature was too big, too fast, too strong. This was exactly what Ambassador Velinara had meant. Humans were too weak to survive in a galaxy full of monsters. Then he heard another roar from behind the creature. Quenter burst out of the forest like a golden thunderbolt. The young Vorthak slammed into the bear lizard thing with enough force to knock it sideways. His claws found the gaps between its scales, and his teeth closed on its thick neck. The two creatures rolled over and over, snarling and clawing at each other. Quenter was smaller than the bear lizard, but he was faster and smarter. He stayed behind it where its claws couldn't reach him and kept tearing at its neck and shoulders. Deho watched in amazement. Quenter was saving him. The Vorthak was supposed to be hunting him, but instead he was fighting to protect him. The bear lizard tried to roll over and crush Quenter underneath it. As it reared up on its hind legs, Deho saw his chance. He picked up a sharp rock and threw it as hard as he could at the creature's left eye. His aim was perfect. The rock hit with a wet sound, and the creature screamed in pain and rage. It spun around to face this new threat, and Quenter's claws found its throat. The fight was over quickly after that. Quenter stood over the dead creature, breathing hard. Blood matted his golden fur, but he didn't look seriously hurt. He turned to look at Deho, and for a moment neither of them moved. "Why did you help me?" Deho asked. Quenter tilted his head like a confused dog. "You threw the stone. You helped me. But you saved me first. You're supposed to be hunting me." The young Vorthak sat back on his haunches. I am hunting you. But that thing would have killed you quickly. Where is the honor in that? A true hunt must be between equals. We're not equals. You're stronger and faster than me. Yes, Quenter agreed. But you are clever in ways I am not. Your traps have taught me to be more careful. Your false trails have made me think harder about tracking. You fight with your mind instead of your claws. They rested by the stream while Quenter cleaned his wounds. Deho offered to help, but the Vorthak politely refused. They were still hunter and prey. The temporary truce wouldn't last past their need for it, but something had changed between them. They talked while they rested, sharing water and comparing the skills of their species. Quenter was curious about human tactics and technology. Deho wanted to know about Vorthak hunting methods and pack behavior. My uncle Thraegver says humans are weak, Quenter said. But you do not seem weak to me. Different, yes. Weaker in body, perhaps, but not weak in spirit. Your uncle is a legend, Deho replied. All the cadets fear him, even the Krogan. He has never been defeated in combat. But he is old now, and sometimes the old ways do not work against new enemies. Quenter looked at Deho thoughtfully. Perhaps that is why he sent me to hunt you instead of doing it himself. Perhaps he wanted to see what a young hunter could learn from a human. As the sun began to set, they went their separate ways. The hunt resumed, but it felt different now. It was less about killing and more about testing each other's skills. They were no longer just hunter and prey. They were becoming something like rivals. Maybe even something like friends. That night, Deho made better time toward the Howling Stones. He was learning to move through the forest like a ghost, using every shadow and sound to stay hidden. But he could feel Quenter getting closer. The young Vorthak was learning too, adapting his hunting style to match his unusual prey. On the 5th day, Deho saw the Howling Stones for the first time. They stood on a hill in the distance, tall and dark against the sky. Ancient Vorthak symbols were carved into their surfaces, and the wind made strange music as it blew through holes in the rock. 2 more days. He just had to survive 2 more days and reach those stones. Then humanity would have its place among the stars. But as he watched from his hiding place, Deho saw Quenter appear on a ridge between him and his goal. The young Vorthak sat calmly, cleaning his claws with his tongue. He knew exactly where Deho was hiding. The final phase of the hunt was about to begin. Quenter raised his head and howled, long and clear. It wasn't the hunting cry from the first night. This was different. It sounded almost like a greeting, like one warrior acknowledging another before battle. Despite everything, Deho found himself smiling. He cupped his hands around his mouth and called back, not a howl but a clear human shout that echoed across the valley. Let the final hunt begin. The 6th day dawned gray and cold. Deho had barely slept, knowing that Quenter was somewhere nearby in the darkness. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow could be hiding his hunter. The Howling Stones were so close now. Just 1 more day. And he would win, but Quenter knew that too. The young Vorthak would not let him reach the goal easily. Deho moved carefully through the morning mist. Staying low and using the thick trees for cover, he had learned to read the forest now. Which sounds meant danger and which meant safety. How to step without making noise. How to breathe without giving away his position. But Quenter had learned too. The Vorthak appeared without warning, dropping from a tree branch like a golden shadow. Deho rolled away just as razor-sharp claws sliced through the air where his head had been. They faced each other in a small clearing. Quenter was breathing hard, and Deho could see scratches and cuts on his fur from days of chasing through thick brush. The young Vorthak looked tired but still dangerous. You have been a worthy hunt, Quenter said. I have learned much from chasing you through my people's ancient forests. It's not over yet, Deho replied. He held a sharp stick in each hand. Carved points hardened in fire. They weren't much against claws and fangs, but they were better than nothing. No, Quenter agreed, it is not. But soon, one way or another, it will be. They circled each other like dancers, each waiting for the other to make the first move. Deho knew he had no chance in a straight fight. His only hope was to be smarter, faster, more creative than his opponent expected. Quenter lunged forward, with a speed that seemed impossible. Deho threw himself sideways and stabbed with one of his wooden spears. The point scraped along the Vorthok's ribs, drawing blood but not stopping him. They rolled across the ground, claws and improvised weapons flashing in the dim light. Deho felt fire across his shoulder as Quenter's claws found their mark. In return, his second spear caught the Vorthok in the leg, making him stumble. The fight was brutal and desperate. Both were wounded and exhausted from days of hunting and being hunted, but neither would give up. Too much depended on the outcome. Then the ground began to shake. At first, Deho thought it was just his heart pounding from the fight, but the trembling got stronger, and dust began to fall from the trees. Quenter stopped mid-attack, his ears pricked up and alert. "What is that?" Deho gasped. Before Quenter could answer, the forest exploded with sound and movement. A pack of Vorthok burst into the clearing, but these were different from the ones Deho had seen at the academy. These were wild, their fur matted and scarred. Their eyes glowed with a savage hunger that made even Quenter step back. "Outcasts," Quenter snarled. "They have no right to be here." The leader of the wild pack was bigger than Quenter, with one ear torn off and claw marks across his face. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "We have every right, young pup. These are the old hunting grounds. They belong to all Vorthok, not just your precious clan. The hunt of proving is sacred," Quenter said. "You cannot interfere." The outcast leader laughed, showing teeth like broken glass. "Sacred? This whole thing is a joke? A human? Here? In our ancient forests?" He looked at Deho with disgust. "This weak little creature has no business walking where our ancestors hunted." More outcasts appeared from the trees. Deho counted at least 8 of them, all bigger and more savage than Quenter. They moved to surround both him and his hunter. "We will kill the human ourselves," the leader said. "And you with him, for the shame of letting prey lead you through the forest like a lost cub." Quenter moved to stand beside Deho, not behind him or in front of him, but beside him, shoulder to shoulder, facing the threat together. "You will have to kill me first," the young Vorthok said quietly. The outcast leader snarled. "That can be arranged." They attacked all at once, 8 savage Vorthok against 1 tired hunter and 1 exhausted human. It should have been over in seconds, but Deho and Quenter had learned to work together during their days in the forest. Without even thinking about it, they moved as a team. Quenter attacked with claws and fangs, while Deho used his improvised weapons to strike at weak points and openings. When an outcast lunged at Deho's back, Quenter was there to intercept. When 2 outcasts tried to drag Quenter down, Deho stabbed one in the eye with a sharpened stick and kicked the other in the knee. They fought like they had been packmates for years instead of hunter and prey for days. Deho's human creativity, combined with Quenter's Vorthok strength, made them more dangerous together than either could be alone, but there were too many enemies, and both fighters were already wounded and tired. An outcast's claws raked across Deho's back, sending him stumbling. Another caught Quenter across the throat, dropping him to his knees. The outcast leader stood over them, breathing hard but victorious. Pathetic. The mighty Quenter brought low by defending a human. Your uncle will weep with shame. "My uncle will avenge me," Quenter gasped. "Your uncle is not here," the leader snarled. "And soon, neither will you be." He raised his claws for the killing blow. Deho tried to move, tried to help, but his body wouldn't obey. Blood ran down his back and arms. Everything hurt. Then the forest erupted again. Thrakver hit the outcast leader like a falling meteor. The old warrior was a blur of silver fur and flashing claws. Behind him came more Vorthok, the watchers who were supposed to observe the hunt. From a distance, the battle was over in minutes. The outcasts were tough, but they were no match for Thrakver and his chosen warriors. Those who weren't killed fled back into the deep forest. Thrakver knelt beside his nephew and examined his wounds. "You fought well, young hunter, both of you." We fought together, Quenter said. His voice was weak but proud. Human and Vorthak as if we were packmates. The old warrior looked at Deho with his one good eye. Is this true, human? Did you fight to protect my nephew when you could have escaped? Deho tried to sit up, wincing as his wounds pulled tight. He saved my life earlier. I couldn't let him die protecting me. Interesting. Thrakver helped both wounded fighters to their feet. The hunt of proving has one more day to run. Can you both continue? Deho looked at Quenter. The young Vorthak was hurt but not beaten. His golden eyes still burned with determination. I can make it to the stones, Deho said. And I can still hunt you when we get there, Quenter replied with something that might have been a smile. Thrakver nodded slowly. Then the hunt continues? But first my nephew has something to say. Quenter stood as straight as his wounds would allow. When he spoke, his voice carried through the forest with formal ceremony. I name this human as Hunt Brother, he said. He has shown courage, skill, and honor. He has fought beside me as an equal. By the old laws and the ancient ways, I claim Kongdeho as brother of my blood and spirit. Thrakver's single eye widened. In all his years, no Vorthak had ever named an alien as Hunt Brother. It was a bond reserved for only the most respected warriors of their own species. You know what this means? The old warrior asked. I know, Quenter said firmly, and I mean every word. Thrakver looked from his nephew to the bleeding human and back again. Something had changed during this hunt, something important. Very well, he said at last. The bond is witnessed and acknowledged, but the hunt of proving still has rules. Tomorrow, at the Howling Stones, hunter and prey must face each other one final time. I understand, Deho said. As do I, Quenter agreed. The sun set on the 6th day. Both warriors limped toward the sacred stones. They were hurt and tired, but neither was ready to give up. The final test was still ahead, but something had changed between them. They were no longer just hunter and prey. They had become something new, something that might change how their species saw each other forever. Behind them, Thrakver watched with growing interest. His nephew had named a human as Hunt Brother. Such a thing had never happened before. If the human succeeded, if he reached the Howling Stones and completed the ancient trial, it would mean more than just acceptance for his species. It might mean the beginning of a new kind of pack. A pack that included more than just Vorthak. The old warrior smiled, showing teeth like white knives. Tomorrow would be very interesting indeed. In orbit above the planet, Lehigh Jin monitored Deho's vital signs and tried not to worry. His heart rate was elevated and his body temperature was running high, but he was still alive, still fighting. Come on, Deho, she whispered to herself. Just one more day. You can do this. On the planet's surface, two warriors made their way through the darkness toward their final confrontation. Brothers in all but blood, they would face each other at dawn and settle their ancient hunt once and for all. The Howling Stones waited in the distance, singing their strange song in the night. Wind. Dawn came slowly on the 7th day. Deho stood at the base of the Howling Stones, looking up at the ancient monuments that towered above him like giant fingers reaching toward the sky. The wind whistled through holes carved in the rock thousands. Of years ago, making the strange music that gave the stones their name, he had made it. 7 days of being hunted through alien forests, and he was still alive. The sacred stones were right here. All he had to do was touch them, and the hunt of proving would be complete. Humanity would earn its place among the warrior races of the galaxy, but first, he had to face Quenter one last time. The young Vorthak emerged from the morning mist like a golden ghost. His fur was matted with dried blood from yesterday's battle, and he moved with the careful steps of someone fighting through pain. But his eyes were still bright and determined. So, Quenter said softly, we meet again at the end of all things. The end of the hunt? Deho agreed. But maybe the beginning of something else. They stood facing each other in the shadow of the ancient stones. Around them the forest was silent except for the wind's eerie song. Somewhere in the trees, Thrakver and the other watchers waited to see how this would end. I have been thinking, Quenter said, about what it means to be Hunt brothers, about what we learned fighting side by side. What did you learn? The young Vorthak was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I learned that strength comes in many forms. I am faster than you, stronger than you. My claws are sharper, and my teeth are keener. But you think in ways I never could. You see solutions where I see only problems. You turn weakness into strength. Deho felt warmth spread through his chest despite the cold morning air. You saved my life yesterday. You could have let that creature kill me and won the hunt easily. That would not have been victory. That would have been cheating. Quenter flexed his claws, but there was no threat in the gesture. A true hunt must be between equals. We may be different, but we are equals in the ways that matter. So what happens now? The hunt has rules? Hunter and prey must face each other at the sacred stones. Quenter smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The rules say I must hunt you to these stones. They say you must try to reach them alive. He stepped aside, clearing the path between Deho and the towering monuments. They do not say I must stop you from touching them. Deho stared at him. In amazement, you're letting me win? No, Quenter said firmly. You won days ago when you chose to fight beside me instead of running away. You won when you threw that stone to save my life. You won when you proved that humans have something my people have forgotten. What's that? Honor, true honor. Not the kind that comes from defeating enemies, but the kind that comes from protecting allies. Even when those allies are supposed to be hunting you. Deho walked slowly toward the nearest stone. His legs felt weak, not from exhaustion, but from emotion. 7 days ago, he had been shamed in front of the entire galaxy. Now, a Vorthak warrior was calling him honorable. He reached out and placed his palm against the cold rock. The stone was smooth and ancient, carved with symbols he couldn't read but somehow understood. They spoke of courage and sacrifice, of hunters and prey, of the eternal dance between predator and survival. It is done, came Thraegver's voice from behind them. The old warrior stepped into the clearing, followed by the other watchers. The hunt of proving is complete. A human has survived 7 days and reached the sacred stones. More figures emerged from the forest. Parkman Su was there, his scarred face beaming with pride. High Counselor Zephyrin had come down from orbit to witness the end. Even Ambassador Velinara was there, though she looked like she had swallowed something bitter. By the ancient laws, Thraegver continued, humanity has proven its worth. They will take their place among the warrior races. Velinara stepped forward, her pale face cold as winter ice. This proves nothing. The humans survived through luck and Vorthak mercy. That is not strength. Is it not? Thraegver's single eye fixed on her with dangerous intensity. The human turned my nephew from hunter into protector. He made allies where others would make only enemies. He fought beside a Vorthak as if they shared the same blood. If that is not strength, then what is? The Silvari do not recognize this result, Velinara said stiffly. We maintain that humans are too weak to serve alongside true warriors, Quenter growled low in his throat. Then perhaps the Silvari should face the hunt of proving themselves. I would be happy to test their strength personally. Velinara went even paler, if that was possible. Everyone knew that no Silvari had ever completed the ancient trial. For all their energy manipulation and crystal armor, they had never been willing to face 7 days alone in the wilderness with death stalking them. The hunt is over, Zephyrin said quickly, sensing the tension. The human has succeeded. The law is clear. Thraegver walked to where Deho and Quenter stood together. The old warrior studied them both with his piercing gaze. Yesterday my nephew named you Hunt Brother, he said to Deho. Today I name you something more. I name you Pack Brother. You are welcome in our halls. You may hunt with our warriors. You are Vorthak in all but blood. The words hit the gathered aliens like thunderbolts. Pack Brother was an honor granted to only the most legendary Vorthak warriors. No alien had ever been given such a title. I am honored beyond words, Deho said, bowing deeply. But I have a request. Speak, I want to stay here and learn. I want to understand your ways and share ours. But I also want to help other humans who come after me. Let me be a bridge between our species. Thrakver considered this. What do you propose? A new kind of training. Humans paired with Vorthek mentors, not as prey and hunters but as partners. We can learn from each other. The old warrior's scarred face split into a grin. An interesting idea. The galaxy is full of enemies that require different kinds of hunting. Perhaps mixed packs would be more effective than pure ones. Over the following weeks, news of the hunt spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The human who had been shamed and mocked had not only survived the impossible trial, but had earned the respect of the Vorthek, the galaxy's most feared hunters, more. Importantly, his success had changed how people thought about strength and weakness. Raw power wasn't everything. Intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to work with others were just as valuable. 3 more humans requested the hunt of proving. All 3 succeeded, guided by Vorthek mentors who had learned from Thrakver's example. Soon other species began to question their own assumptions about human weakness. Deho stood in the Academy's main hall 6 months later, watching new cadets arrive from across the galaxy. This time, no one questioned humanity's right to be there. If anything, other species competed to train alongside human partners. Li Haijin approached him, her communications equipment beeping with messages from across the galaxy. 3 more requests for joint training programs, she reported. The Krogan want to learn human tactical planning. The Tenthari are interested in our engineering creativity. And the Silvari? Deho asked. Haijin grinned. Ambassador Velanara submitted a formal request for cultural exchange. Apparently they want to understand how humans build such strong alliances so quickly. Deho laughed. The same woman who had called humans weak was now asking to learn from them, Quenter patted. Up to them on silent feet. The young Vorthak wore Academy instructor insignia now, one of the first aliens to be certified in human Vorthak cooperative training methods. The new mixed unit is ready for deployment, he reported. 2 humans, 2 Vorthak, 1 Krogan, and 1 Silvari. They have been training together for 3 months. How are they working together? Deho asked. Like a true pack. The humans provide tactical planning and creative problem-solving. The Vorthak handle scouting and close combat. The Krogan serves as heavy support and the Silvari provides energy, weapons, and communication. Together, they are more effective than any single species unit. Park Min-soo joined them, his old service pistol replaced by newer equipment designed specifically for human-alien cooperation. The brass wants to expand the program. 5 more mixed units by the end of the year. The galaxy is changing, Haijin observed. Species that barely spoke to each other before are now working together as partners. Deho nodded, watching the new cadets interact. Humans chatted with Vorthek. Krogan shared training tips with Silvari. The barriers that had seemed so solid just months ago were crumbling. It's what we learned in the forest, he said. We're stronger together than apart. Different doesn't mean weak. It just means different. That evening, Deho stood again at an observation deck, looking out at the stars. But this time he wasn't alone. Quenter stood beside him, along with Haijin and several other friends from different species. Do you ever regret it? Quenter asked. Leaving Earth to come here? Deho thought about it. No, Earth will always be home, but this is where I belong now, building bridges, helping people understand each other. The first human hunt brother, Haijin said with a smile. You've become a legend. We've become a legend, Deho corrected. All of us. Everyone who chose to work together instead of staying apart. Thrakver appeared behind them, moving with the silence that made him such an effective hunter. The new recruits are ready for their first mission, he announced.